What's up, guys? This is Frankie from Blessed Leaf Live, coming at you with a good old Ezra Zion FHK tonight. Looking forward to this bad boy. Had it sitting in the Humi for quite some time, and looking forward to hanging out. It's gonna be a good time looking into the Word, Hebrews chapter 9. Well, looky there. Just pulled out my trusty scissors here, and when I did, a little tantrum wrapper fell out of there. A little band. I'm not good. There we go. Nice. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and cut the cap on this bad boy. Get things started. If you are watching us from YouTube, you can find us at blessedleaf.com and check out more of our videos on there. We're in part 9 tonight. Tonight, Kyle and Chris are busy, and so I have the opportunity to hang out with you, dig into the Word, and go from there. I'll tell you this, last week Kyle and I were able to catch up, tear up some barbecue from Risky's in downtown Fort Worth. I happened to be in Fort Worth for just a little while Tuesday, funeral Wednesday morning, and so Kyle and I grabbed lunch, had a good time, and then had to head back this way. And so last week, 4 inches of snow on the ground. Today, 70 degrees right here in Fort Smith. Crazy, crazy, crazy. So give it a week. You never know around here. It's probably the exact same way it is wherever you be's. It's that good old El Nino, Spanish for the Nino. Oh, man. Good draw on that. As to be expected. Sweet little band. Bust that out. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah. Pretty. Oh, so pretty. Get this lit up here and we'll get going. So I hope you all are having a great week. I am. And I hope you guys are doing the same. Tonight, as I mentioned, it's been a couple weeks. It's been 3 weeks. But we're going to dig into Hebrews chapter 9. And I'm looking forward to it. Oh, I don't even know how to tell you how good this is. You should know at this point. If you don't, check them out. These guys, you may have heard of them. Ezra, Zion, FHK. Great size. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that burn. Oh, yeah. Anywho, enough of that. Tonight, I'm pairing with sweet tea from Sonic. And it's actually just water now. And the precious. I've actually had a couple of these today. So this is number 3, 8 o'clock at night. You know, it's going to be a good night. It's going to be a good night. I'm going to like be going as fast as I possibly can. I'm going to be talking as fast as I can because I've had 3 cups of coffee. We'll see how it goes. Just kidding. But if you know me, you probably know that you can probably tell I have had a couple cups of coffee. Anyways, it doesn't get any better than this. Coffee, cigar, the Word of God. It shall be a good evening. It'll be great. I'm excited. Hope you're excited. Man, look at that. So pretty. Okay. So, as I said, the guys are busy. They're out doing their busy life thing, spending time with their families and doing a little Ezra Zion stuff. So tonight I have the blessed opportunity to take us to the Word. And I just want to encourage you guys and gals who may be out there listening, watching, I want to encourage you. This is a season for me, and it seems like as a pastor that I go through seasons of funerals, seasons of weddings, seasons of hospital visits. If you know what I mean when I say seasons, like literally feels like I'm doing weddings all the time, or I'm doing funerals all the time, or I'm up at the hospital all the time. And this is a season of weddings. It just kind of happens to work out that way. I've got one almost every weekend for the next few weekends, and so it's a refreshing time. I find that as a pastor, a lot of times with funerals, I really tend to be emotionally involved. I don't think you can. I don't think you cannot. Double negative there, but it's tough to not be involved emotionally, and so I enjoy these times. I enjoy doing funerals too. That may sound crazy. Sometimes funerals are more powerful. That may be hard to understand, but we'll just leave it there so that we can get on to what we're here to do tonight. So anyways, that's kind of where I'm coming from. Just this season of preparing for weddings, preparing the weekends, weddings and sermons and all that good stuff. So good. So, you got your Bibles, flip over with me, if you will, to Hebrews chapter 9. And we shall get started. I've got my trusty steed iPad here. Let's go. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 1 says this. Now even the first covenant had regulations for worship and an earthly place of holiness. For the tent was prepared, the first section, in which were the lampstand and the table of the bread of the presence, is called the holy place. Behind the second curtain was a second section called the most holy place, having the golden altar of incense and the ark of the covenant covered on all sides with gold, in which was a golden urn holding the manna and Aaron's staff that budded in the covenant. Above it were the cherubim of glory overshadowing the mercy seat. Of these things we cannot now speak in detail. These preparations having thus been made, the priests goes regularly into the first section, performing their ritual duties. Verse 7. But unto the second, only the high priest goes, and he but once a year, and not without taking blood, which he offers for himself and for the unintentional sins of the people. By this, the Holy Spirit indicates that the way into the holy places is not yet opened as long as the first section is still standing, which is symbolic of the present age. According to this arrangement, gifts and sacrifices are offered that cannot perfect the conscience of the worshiper, but rather deal only with food and drink and various washings, regulations for the body imposed until a time of reformation. Verse 11, but when Christ appeared as the high priest of the good things that have come, even though the greater and more perfect tent, then through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation. Verse 12, he entered once for all into the holy places, not by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by means of his own blood, thus securing an eternal redemption. Verse 13, for if the blood of goats and bulls and the sprinkling of defiled persons with the ashes of a heifer sanctify for the purification of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, purify our conscience from dead works to serve the living God. Verse 15, therefore, he is the mediator of a new covenant, so that those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance, since a death has occurred that redeems them from the transgressions committed under the first covenant. For where a will is involved, the death of the one who made it must be established. For a will takes effect only at death, since it is not enforced as long as the one who made it is alive. Therefore, not even the first covenant was inaugurated without blood. For when every commandment of the law had been declared by Moses to all the people, he took the blood of calves and goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people, saying, "This is the blood of the covenant that God commanded for you." Verse 21, and in the same way he sprinkled with the blood both the tent and all the vessels used in worship. So good, you just got to pause and take a couple puffs here. All right, verse 22. Indeed, under the law, almost everything is purified with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. Verse 23. Thus, it was necessary for the copies of the heavenly things to be purified with these rites, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Christ has entered in not only holy places made with hands, which are copies of the true things, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God on our behalf. Nor was it to offer himself repeatedly as the high priest enters the holy places every year with blood not his own. For then he would have to suffer repeatedly since the foundation of the world. But as it is, he has appeared once for all at the end of the ages to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. All right, trying to blow a couple smoke rings. Verse 27, two more verses. And just as it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment, so Christ, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time, not to deal with sin, but to save those who are eagerly waiting for him. That is chapter 9. I just feel like we can go, okay, well, good stuff. Y'all have a great night. And that's it. Wrap it up after 15 minutes. Look at that. So good. Excellent, excellent cigar. Perfect shape, perfect burn. I love this size. I said shape, but I meant size. I love this size. I'm not even for sure what that size is. It's not quite a Lancero. A little bit bigger than a Lancero. Excellent cigar. So tonight's passage is powerful, and I don't want to do really tonight what we've done in the past, simply because if I want to try to cover chapter 9, there's just bits and pieces we'll be able to hit more in detail than others. But it's so rich. I mean, the whole book of Hebrews is so rich and systematic and just general theology. It's powerful. It's great stuff. So what I want to do is just kind of tell you about some of the stuff that I've been reading. As I mentioned a second ago, I was going to share with you some of my own stuff, and then I want to bring it back into this. So it's early mid-March, and with some of the guys at the church, I've committed to kind of going back through Genesis and reading the Bible through with them, and we cover just a couple of chapters a day, just reading on our own and then discussing it via email, that kind of stuff. And so it's just another venue of accountability for me. So today I was reading Exodus chapter 7. No, I wasn't. I was reading Exodus chapter 12, which deals with the Passover. And so as I was reading through there, just kind of coming from the perspective of Hebrews, having Hebrews on my heart and on my mind, and going through the book, but at the same time, kind of with the flashing back as I read through Genesis and Exodus. Chapter chapter 12 of Exodus is Moses with the 10th plague, and God telling Moses what to do with the 10th plague, what that's going to look like for the people and how that's going to come about. And thinking about this passage here today of Hebrews chapter 9, I want to just kind of walk you through what Exodus chapter 12 is saying. And pretty much it's just a couple of verses. I think it's 17 and 18. I'm not going to go there just so that I don't lose my mind or lose my train of thought in my head. But ultimately, what Moses is recording in Exodus chapter 12, verse 17 and 18 is the requirement is going to be that these Israelite people and anyone for that matter whom Moses informs, they're going to have to sacrifice a lamb, and they're not to sound crude, but they're not to gut the animal. They're to cook it, not boil it, not put it in a stew type thing, but literally roast it. And the same chapter 12 says they're to be dressed, have their sandals on, their belt on, ready to run. And so just this visual of what they're about to do, which is to pack up and leave, to leave Egypt and make the journey into the promised land. Ooh. Tell you, Blessed Leaf Live, cigars, the Word of God, coffee. It's like this the best three things in the world. Anyways, you know that because you're hanging out with us. So, Exodus 12, God is telling Moses, tell the people, here's what you're supposed to do. This Passover, the animal, the lamb, these bitter herbs, this meal you're supposed to eat it in haste, like eat it quick, which is kind of how I eat every meal, I guess. Eat it quickly. Be ready to go, kind of thing. And it's interesting. He says, I'm gonna lead you out of this land. So what do? They put the blood on the doorposts and the side walls, I guess you should say, of the entryway to their house. And in the middle of the night, the death angel, if you will, passes through. And for every house that doesn't have that, the firstborn dies. If the blood is on the doorpost, the angel passes over. Okay. And I just ashed all over the keyboard. Good times, good times. Not if there's anything wrong with that. But anyway. So, that being said, that kind of being the background of what all's going on here, I want you to just kind of think about this. So here's God's people who on this special day, in Exodus chapter 12 says, from this point on, for the rest of your lives, celebrate this holiday. It's going to be a special day for you, a day in which you'll remember. It's a day that you're going to be able to go free afterwards. And, chapter 13, you've heard the story of how the story goes. Pharaoh lets him go, changes his mind afterwards, right? Tries to catch up with them, chase them down. And they cross the Red Sea. God parts the waters. They cross the Red Sea, closes the waters on Pharaoh as he tries to catch up with them. So, think about this. Exodus chapter 12, Passover. People are fleeing Egypt. You've had your sacrificial lamb representing your freedom, representing the opportunity that you now have to not be a slave to Pharaoh and to someone else. And then you have this beautiful picture in the New Testament. This unreal, unbelievable, beautiful story of Jesus. And everything comes together. It's my favorite passage. I've told you before on here, Galatians 4, 4 and 5, in the fullness of time, God sent forth his son, born of woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law. So what happens is God sends his son in perfect timing. So it's not coincidence that at the end of Jesus's earthly ministry just so happens to be the Passover. And so Jesus, the night that he's betrayed, begins the Passover meal. And so he breaks bread. He has the Lord's Supper, if you will, with his men. And the story of Jesus is a story of this Messiah coming out of Egypt, very similar to that of Moses. The similarity being, if you remember, Joseph having a vision telling him to flee in the night, to head towards Egypt, where he would be safe, because Herod was going to come after him. See, I get to talking, I get distracted with my own thoughts, and if I'm not careful, I'll let this beauty burn out, and I do not want to do that. It is so good. I talk so much when doing these shows too that I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but I hardly ever get to finish a cigar while I'm on the show. I usually have to finish it afterwards. This one is so good. It may be the first one ever that I finish while doing this show. So good. Get you some. Good stuff. All right. So years later, here's Jesus, who on Passover says, "This is my blood. This is my body. Eat, drink, do this in remembrance of me." This is the demonstration of Jesus, the Passover lamb. Within 24 hours, he's hung on a cross. He's crucified. It is Passover, so they are quick to get all of the men down from the tree. So they go to break Jesus's legs. He's already dead. So they pierce his side. Here is the sacrifice. Now, the last few verses of Exodus chapter 12 talk about the crucifixion, or the cost of Passover, which is the death of the firstborn. Boom. Jesus, the only begotten Son, God the Father's firstborn, if you will, crucified. It's a beautiful, beautiful picture of what Moses couldn't complete through this law, through this system that was broken. Jesus accomplished. That's a lot of what Hebrews has been piecing together for us up to this point. So now, with that being said, I kind of want to walk us through just reading back through the verses, really, of Hebrews chapter 9. That, for what it's worth, right there was just my own personal quiet time this morning, and reflecting upon, man, how crazy and cool is this theology that God, in his perfect timing, would align Jesus to come at the feast, that the betrayal, all of these things would take place just at the right time. Pretty cool stuff. And the crazy thing is, I didn't even scratch the surface of all of the intricate details that play out in this crucial point in time on earth, in which Jesus fulfills so many other things. Pilate even recognizes some of them. He's even heard of some of the Jewish customs. You have a custom, you let one guy go free, and so he's trying to get out of the situation of letting Jesus go free. So he brings Judas, right? No, Barabbas. He brings Barabbas forward. Name glitch there for a minute. He brings Barabbas forward. Hey, let's let this guy go. No, crucify Jesus, crucify Jesus. There's theory that says that Barabbas is a last name. Bar-Abbas means son of father. When Barabbas is a last name, Josephus records that Barabbas' first name could very well be Jesus. Jesus Barabbas. So you have Jesus, Son of Father, Son of Man, and you have Jesus Christ, Son of God. One of them going free, one of them being crucified. That is Leviticus chapter 16. Sacrificial system, the Day of Atonement, all of these things fulfilled. We don't have time to get more into details of all those, but check those out if you want to. So anyways, like I said, we just scratched the surface of the intricate details of what's going on here. So in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 1, it says, now even the first covenant had regulations for worship and an earthly place of holiness, right? This is Moses, this temple. Verse 2. Verse 2, a tent was prepared. The first section in which were the lampstand and the table at the bread of, and the bread of the presence. It is called the holy place. Behind the second curtain was a second section called the most holy place. All of this gets opened up, right? The curtain, this curtain or veil, if you will, was closed off from the most holy place. It's the veil that was torn from top to bottom. Matthew chapter 27, verse 51, when Jesus says, it is finished, the earth quakes, the whole earth goes dark, and the veil is torn. Representing the openness that we now all have, the symbolism that we all have to the Father. Powerful stuff. All right, verse 4. He gets into the details, having the golden altar of incense and the Ark of the Covenant covered on all sides with gold. He gets into these details for a reason. Listen to this. It says, in which it was a golden urn holding the manna and Aaron's staff that budded and the tablets of the covenant. All right, a copy of Moses's 10 Commandments, the staff that budded. So these things that were stuck inside, put inside the covenant. Verse 5, it says, above it were the cherubim of gold, of glory, overshadowing the mercy seat. Of these things we cannot speak in detail. So he's just pretty much saying all the things that were supposed to be in the Holy of Holies, that's where they were at. And that's the things that were in there. Now you can go back to Exodus and you can read about the specifics of the things that were stuffed inside there. Some really cool stuff. Manna. There's really cool things that God had said, hey, put this in here and keep this as reminders of what I've done for you, how I provided you bread. And then ultimately, there again, Jesus saying, I am the bread of life. All right, verse 6. These preparations, having thus been made, the priests go regularly into the first section, performing their ritual duties. All right, we've hit this before, but these ritual duties, as long as you have an earthly priest, you have someone who has to go in and perform these duties all the time. Jesus, his work is done. He is sitting at the right hand of the Father. He's sitting. He's not standing up. He's not walking in, doing things. His work is done. He's just chilling out, feet propped up, relaxing. His work is finished. All right, verse 7. But only the second, but into the second, only the high priest goes. But but once a year, and not without taking blood, which he offers for himself and for the unintentional sins of the people. Like, oops, I sinned today. I didn't even realize I did it. I have to offer I offer a sacrifice for those type sins. Crazy. By this, the Holy Spirit indicates that the way into the holy places is not yet opened as long as the first section is still standing. All right, which has been torn down now, by the way. AD 70, the temple was destroyed, so that's what helps us to understand these details that he's describing here. The temple probably still existed, so that gives us a time reference between AD 60 and probably AD 69. Okay, verse 10. But deal only with the food and drink and various washings, regulations for the body imposed until the time of Reformation. Verse 11. But when Christ appeared as a high priest of the good things, fragrant offerings, good things that have come, then through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is not of this creation. This is where it gets really cool. He entered once for all into the holy places, not by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by means of his own blood. He's a priest who said, you know what? None of these other sacrifices are good enough. I'm sacrificing myself. And he did, thus securing an eternal redemption. That is meat. That's do you remember when the author of Hebrews said there's such details, intricate things I'd love to talk about, but right now you're not mature enough. Right now you still need milk instead of a steak. Here's the steak. All right, verse 13. For if the blood of goats and bulls and the sprinkling of defiled persons of the ashes of a heifer sanctify for the purification of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, purify our conscience from dead works to serve the living God? That is good stuff. That is showing that the latter, Jesus Christ, is much greater than the former, the practicing priest who comes and goes. Dad Ash, look at that Ash. All right, I knocked that off. All right, verse 15. Therefore, he is the mediator of a new covenant. This is this new covenant type language now, so that those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance, since a death has occurred that redeems them from the transgressions committed under the first covenant. For where a will is involved, and this is the talking back about the will, if there's a will that's involved, it's because the will only takes place if someone dies. Therefore, not even the first covenant was inaugurated without blood. And this idea of blood for sacrifices goes all the way back to Adam and Eve. If that makes sense, let me just explain it for just a second. Adam and Eve, as soon as they sinned, they clothed themselves. If you remember, they clothed themselves with figs, not doing a very good job. So it says that God covered them with the skin of animals. So immediately after the first sin of Adam and Eve, God provides a sacrifice of an animal to clothe Adam and Eve with skins. So you can even go back to then to say this, thus sacrificing for the cause of man's sin, sacrificing and pouring out of blood for man's sin begins. All right. So verse 19. For when every commandment of the law had been declared by Moses to all the people, he took the blood of calves and goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people. All right, so what you've got going on would appear to any person of today to be like this weird, bizarre, bloody ritual of some weird religion. And yet this is exactly what God required of his people. It was gross, but it was to teach them the cost of their sins. So pretty powerful, very powerful. Verse 20, it says, saying, this is the blood of the covenant that God commanded for you. You want to be my people? This is what I require. Verse 21, and in the same way, he sprinkled with the blood both the tent and all the vessels used in worship. So everything that was in the temple and in the tent for worship was bloody. Gruesome place. Aaron would have, as priest, when he goes in to carry out these sacrifices, would have just been a bloody dude, just these crimson stains kind of thing, this bloody hands. And he would have been like that all the time. So crazy stuff. All right. So verse 22, indeed, under the law, almost everything is purified with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. Why is that the case? We don't know. The Bible tells us, puts that into play, and it's throughout the Bible. A requirement of sin is blood. Verse 23, thus it was necessary, this is cool. It was necessary for the copies of the heavenly things to be purified with these rites. But the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. All right. Sacrifices for the heavenly things. Think about that one. That's pretty crazy. He's going to explain it in verse 24. I don't know if you understood that or not, but I said he's going to explain it in verse 24. For Christ has entered not only holy places made with hands, get this, which are copies of the true things, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God on our behalf. So what is this tent? What are these places of worship, and why are all these things assigned these exact measurements? Because they're copies of the heavenly things. Pretty cool stuff. They are laid out for us of what things will look like in heaven. That's awesome. That helps us here on earth as we worship, as we try to study and figure out and wonder what's heaven like. This gives us an idea of what it looks like. It's the reason that these exact requirements of size of places, of the tents, of the tent of meetings, the tabernacle, all these different places were set up to a certain size, as maybe like a miniature scale, like a 1/10 scale or 1/26, who knows? We'll find out soon enough. But anyways, very, very cool. All right. Verse 25 says, nor was it to offer himself repeatedly, as the high priest enters the holy places every year with blood not his own. For then he would have to suffer repeatedly since the foundation of the world. But as it is, he has appeared once for all at the end of the ages to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. Boom. And just as it is appointed to man to die once, and after that comes a judgment, so Christ, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time, not to deal with sin, but to save those who are eagerly waiting for him. That is our text of chapter 9. So, Jesus comes along and in every way perfectly demonstrates for us how we are to live in his culture, in his lifestyle, with his family, with his priorities. And it gives us this beautiful vision of who God the Son is, this second being of the Trinity. And it helps us to, for me, it helps me to know who he is, and the thankfulness when it comes to realizing I'm not perfect, and I mess up every day, but Jesus is. I don't have to beat myself up about sin. Now, I do not beat myself up, but I do get frustrated when I mess up. But the sin has already been paid for. Jesus knew long before I did it that I would, and he's already forgiven me of it. So beautiful, beautiful thing. So that is Hebrews chapter 9. I'm still not done. Whew. So good. So good. So I want to just encourage you guys and gals that as you go throughout this week, that you're just kind of able to maybe just worship because of what Jesus has done. You can just rest and know that the price has been paid. Jesus paid it all. All to him I owe. Cleansed me and made me as white as snow, as the old song would say. And so we have this grace that's been bestowed upon us. And I don't know if you're like me as a pastor, just dealing with people and the busyness of life. But I can, if I'm not careful, I can just get caught up in all of it, and just get stuck in the rut of busyness and not take time to really reflect on that. For me, my passion and what drew me to a love of Hebrews and a love of systematic theology was several years ago in my just my Christian walk. I was at Southwestern Seminary, and I began to really Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Cheerio. So I wrestled with all of that. Let me back up for just a second. So I was at Southwestern, and I had this is my second degree. My first was at Southeastern in Bible. So I was working on my advanced MDiv in biblical languages, and absolutely loving the studying. But just sat down one day, actually in class, and thought, I want to just back up and wrestle with if this whole thing could just be a theory, or if I really should depend on Jesus. Now, people have asked me, like, what do you mean? Did you just decide that Jesus wasn't real? That none of this had taken place? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I wanted to know my faith, to know what I believed. And so I wrestled with it. What if this Jesus character was just a dude? What if he wasn't God? So what I did was I just started the Bible over, reading it from a perspective of trying to figure out who Jesus was. And it didn't take me long to begin to see Jesus, even in Genesis. Let us, who's us? Let us make man in our image. Who's our? And I just wrestled and I tried to figure out who Jesus was. And then in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, this seed that is going to crush the seed of Eve that's going to crush the serpent's head. Who is that? And so Jesus, for me, just started showing up in the Old Testament as I would wrestle through things. And as I would try to maybe play the devil's advocate to try and figure out who Jesus was, Jesus revealed himself more and more and more to me. And so that trying to figure it all out just brought me to a better understanding. It didn't help me to go, no, maybe this isn't the case. It helped me to go, this is exactly the case. And look how these pieces all connect. You can see Jesus throughout the whole thing. As I was trying to demonstrate through Exodus chapter 12, it's simply bookended. Here is this Moses who's delivering God's people, who is helping them to get out of slavery. And then tonight, as we see, here is Jesus, who is once for all taking his people and delivering them from not an earthly slavery, but a spiritual slavery. He's setting the captives free spiritually. I think too that's one of the things that we wrestle with as Christians is, and maybe I come from this perspective a lot more because on a daily basis I deal with people who don't feel blessed, I should say, people who feel like it's their worst day of their lives, and maybe it very well is their worst moment. And they have their trials in life, and they're able to come in and just wrestle and wonder. And I love those moments because those are the opportunities where I can point them back to Christ, and we can kind of mark from that point forward as we grow in our walk together. And so, kind of getting off on a tangent there, but I just want to encourage you that that you be real, that you enjoy the opportunities that you have to wrestle with God, and that he's okay with that. Look at Jacob, Yisrael. changing your name, and I'm blessing you because today you have wrestled with God. It's biblical. And that's the thing. That's the beauty of this whole thing, is that it's not just about a priest in Hebrews chapter 9 who was Jesus, but it's about a relationship. That Jesus wasn't just a man, but that he is God, and that he did this sacrifice for me, for you. And we can have that relationship with him. So good. Cigars, coffee, and the good word. It does not get any better than this. Guys, that's all I got. I love you guys. I'm praying for you. I don't even know all of you, but we're praying for you guys. May you be blessed. Have a wonderful rest of your week. See here, not even finished, but I'm going to sit here and soak this thing up. Enjoy it. Love y'all. Be blessed. And we'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.